Welcome to Libel University and the video tutorial series for the certification of the Pamana Funeral Expense Benefit. This segment number 5 is titled, The Impact of Culture on Trauma. At the end of this tutorial, you should become familiarized with the value of cultural diversities, rites and rituals of various cultures, and diverse religious observances of death. The purpose of this segment is to broaden your horizon and understanding as to how different societies cope with the loss of a loved one, especially as the United States is characterized as a nation of immigrants, reflecting vast cultural diversity. The value of cultural diversities. Within a culture, there are many subcultures possessing unique traits that set them apart from each other. This is no different when it comes to funeral traditions. The passing of a friend or a loved one is an incredibly emotional and trying time, making it exceptionally important that funeral etiquette be observed to avoid offending or upsetting anyone. Knowing and understanding the customs and traditions according to religious or cultural beliefs at a viewing or a wake, at a funeral or cremation, or a graveside service will foster the respect, sympathy, and empathy needed to convey our funeral expense benefit to your client. Cultural perspectives can shape people's reactions to a traumatic experience. Specifically, culture. It influences what type of threat is perceived as traumatic, influences how individuals and communities interpret the meaning of a traumatic event, and how they express their reactions to that event. Culture forms a context through which traumatized individuals or communities view and judge their own responses. Culture may help define healthy pathways to new lives after the trauma. Rites and rituals of various cultures. Number 1. Practices of the Native American culture. Native American observances also vary considerably in traditions and religions and rituals, but there is a strong commonality among many tribes that center around the natural world, the earth, animals, the trees, and the natural spirit. Even among those who have been converted to Christianity, there is an emphasis on the reunion with nature that occurs at death. Common practices include: the medicine man or spiritual leader leads the ritual. Deceased ancestors are asked to join in the rituals. The belief that the spirit of the person never dies. Gifts are buried with the deceased. Pipes are smoked. The circle is symbolic in the ritual, as in the circle of life. Nature is revered. Death is part of nature. The burial is often done at a special site, either close to or away from their home. Death is believed to be a journey to another world. Number 2. Practices of the Hispanic American culture. Hispanic or Hispanic American Latino populations also have diverse cultural backgrounds, including individuals from the islands of Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic, and those who come from Spain, Mexico, and Central or South America also differ. Most Hispanic populations practice the Roman Catholic faith, but not all. Common practices in the aftermath of death are high involvement of the priest in funeral plans. Family and friends are encouraged to be part of the commemoration. The rosary is said by surviving loved ones, often at the home of the deceased. Among some Hispanic groups, the rosary is said each night for 9 nights after the death of the loved one. Some families say the rosary even every month for a year, and then repeat it on at each anniversary. Funeral services often include a mass. Loved ones are encouraged to express grief, and many are involved in the procession of the grave. Many Hispanic survivors commemorate the loss of their loved ones with promises or commitments. These promises are taken very seriously, and those who fail to honor them are considered sinners. Money gifts to help cover the expense of the funeral and burial are not unusual. And some Latino societies even celebrate the Day of Death and remember their loved ones by visiting the gravesite. Number 3. Practices of the Asian American culture. Asian Americans may follow Buddhist, Confucian, or Taoist practices regarding death, with some elements of Christian traditions. Common practices include a family gathering at the funeral home to make arrangements, with the family elders assuming ultimate responsibility for the ceremony. There is great respect for the body, Warm clothes may be used for burial, and watertight caskets are used to keep the elements out. Stoic attitudes are common, and depression may result from the internalization of grief. An open casket allows for respect to elders. Often poems in calligraphy are left for the deceased. Among Chinese Americans, a cooked chicken may be placed by the casket as a last meal for the deceased and their spirits. The chicken will be buried with the body. The funeral route, burial location, and the choice of the monument are important. Incense may be burned at the grave. Among some populations, sacrifices may be made at the funeral. Number 4. Practices of the African American culture. African Americans have traditions concerning death that draw from many cultures, ethnic, and religious backgrounds. Some common patterns include high involvement of a funeral director in preparations for mourning and burial, a gathering of friends and family at the home of the deceased to offer support and share in their common grief, a wake during which music, songs, and hymns are played or sung. Some African Americans hold a service known as the homegoing service. It usually reflects the personality of the deceased and celebrates the conviction of going home to Jesus and being reunited with past friends and relatives. A funeral service is followed by a burial. Cremation is less accepted in the African American community. Many in African American communities mourn by dressing in white as a sign of resurrection and celebrate with music and hope. African Americans often express grief at death with physical manifestation of great emotion. African Americans may believe in the concept of the living dead. This concept refers to people who have died but whose spirits live in the memories and thoughts of those still living. These people are the ones who will help others who die move on to the next world. Number 5. Practices of the Haitian American culture. Although there is a diversity in religious practices among Haitian and Haitian Americans today, they tend to share the following common patterns in the aftermath of death. Close family members and relatives make arrangements for the funeral and church services. A gathering takes place of family members and those close friends at the home of the deceased to pray and offer their support. A wake is held at the home of the deceased every night from the time of death to the time of burial. At the wake, they chat, eat, drink, and share jokes. A viewing is followed by the funeral service and burial. Close family members mourn by dressing in black or white. The wearing of bright colors such as red is not considered an expression of mourning. It is preferable to wear dark colors such as blue, purple, and brown to attend a funeral. Many Haitians express grief with a physical manifestation of great emotion. After the burial, family members and friends usually gather at the home of the deceased for a reception, where flaky pastries, black coffee, tea, and other foods are served. Number 6. Practices of the European American culture. European Americans follow various cultural, ethnic, and religious traditions regarding post-death ceremonial and bereavement practices. But the general tendencies include: friends and family gather at the home of the deceased or family member to support and share in the common grief. This practice usually occurs following the announcement of the death. High dependence upon a funeral director or a person of the clergy in preparations for mourning and burial take place. A visitation or viewing at a funeral home is typically followed by a religious or graveside service. Funeral services tend to be rather subdued. Traditionally, dark clothing tends to be worn during ceremonial services, although this trend has shifted in recent years to a more color-based wardrobe, which is focused on creating an atmosphere of celebration and hope. Interment is followed by a gathering at the home of the deceased, where food and refreshments are normally provided. Diverse religious observances of death. The role of religion is important because answers to religious questions form views and provide meaning of life and death. Some religions give individuals more power over life than others. Some religions give collections of individuals power over life. Some religions give spirits more power over life than the living. Some give power to free will. Others give over to fatalism. But all have defined ways of dealing with death. Some religious differences include: number 1, Jewish observances. All customs are designed to treat the body with respect. Therefore, autopsies and embalming are generally prohibited. Viewing the corpse is also considered disrespectful. Funerals are not allowed on Saturday or the Sabbath, or on major religious holidays. Music and flowers are not encouraged. Eulogies are given by rabbis, family, and friends. When the deceased person is held in high regard, there are usually several eulogies. Family members and others accompany the casket to the grave and are encouraged to place a shovel of earth on the casket as a sign of the finality of death. The period of mourning lasts for 1 year. The mourner's Kaddish, or declaration of faith, is said at the graveside service. Blessed, praised, glorified, and exalted, extolled, honored, and magnified, and lauded be the name of the Holy One. May abundant peace from the heavens descend upon us, and may life be renewed for us and all Israel, and let us say, Amen. Sitting Shiva refers to the 7-day mourning period immediately following burial. The family cooks no food, and a candle or lamp is kept burning in memory of the deceased. The Kaddish is said every day during this time. Some people observe a period of 3 days following the burial, after which visitors are not received and the time is devoted only to lamentation. After the first 7 days, survivors are encouraged to rejoin society but still maintain mourning by reciting the Kaddish twice daily for 30 days. Many mourners may wear a black pin with a torn ribbon or a torn garment during the funeral and for the next week as a symbol of grief. Newborn babies may be named after the deceased. The first anniversary is marked by the unveiling of a tombstone at a special ceremony. Number 2, Roman Catholic observance. The sacraments of the sick are prayers that are said as the person is dying and involve confession and communion. If a person dies before the sacraments are given, the priest will anoint the deceased conditionally within 3 hours of the time of death. There is often a wake, and if so, the priest will conduct the service or say the rosary. There are distinct phases to the Mass of Christian burial. Prayers at the funeral home. Welcoming the body to the church, covering the casket with a white cloth, sprinkling the casket with holy water. The Eucharist is celebrated. Prayers are said after the Mass. The casket is escorted back to the church. At the cemetery, the grave is blessed. Consecration is a reaffirmation that the person will rise again. Prayers address not only the dead, but the survivors. Their faith in eternal life is encouraged. The 1-month anniversary of the death is often celebrated by a Mass, as are those of other anniversaries. 3. Protestant observances. There are a wide range of Protestant observances, including, often there is a family gathering at the family home or funeral. Caskets, opened or closed, are part of the passage. Memorial items may be placed in the casket. Cremation is an accepted option for some. Black dress is a part of mourning. Funeral services include music and testimonials. Music may include traditional hymns or songs of praise celebrating the Christian experience and the hope of everlasting life. Gravesite visits may be made. Memorial services are common and sometimes replace funerals and other immediate observances of death. Flowers and donations are preferred ways to express condolences. Church members and friends will usually assist in providing the food needs of the family. The period of time will vary according to the needs of each family. There is no formal structure to observe the death, month after month or year after year. 4. Islamic traditions. Traditions differ in every country, and the Turkish interpretation of Islam is in some ways different than those in other Arabic countries. These comments are basically relevant for Turkish culture. Death is considered an act of God, and it is not questioned. Faithful followers believe that all the events in the life course of an individual, including the time and type of death, are pre-written by God. People in grief are encouraged to show their feelings openly. They are encouraged to cry loudly, as it is believed that crying cleanses the soul. Any expression of rebellion against God's decision to take a person away from his or her dear ones is considered a sin. Friends visit the house of the deceased and talk with the family members, encouraging them to describe how the death occurred and what they were doing at the time of death. For 7 days, the family members are never left alone. Friends and neighbors bring food, as no cooking is supposed to be done in a funeral home during those 7 days. Traditionally, no television, radio, or any musical device will be allowed for 40 days. However, this practice has waned in recent years. There is a religious prayer at the 40th day and another one at the 52nd day after the death. Muslims are very sensitive as to where their beloved loved ones are buried. They will want them buried in a Muslim cemetery. They also want the funeral prayers to be led by a Muslim, not a rabbi or a Christian priest. A special ceremony and prayers accompany the funeral. The body is buried without the coffin and wrapped in white clothes, as it is believed that the body should touch the earth. The body must be washed or bathed with certain rituals before the funeral ceremony begins. This usually takes place at either a special section of the mosque or in the morgue of the hospital. It is very upsetting when a body is buried without being washed. When meeting with someone who has lost a relative, conversations start by saying, "May you be alive and may God's blessing be on him or her," the deceased. Knowing and understanding another culture's processing of grief, loss, and trauma can foster the respect, sympathy, and empathy needed to convey our Pamana funeral expense benefit to your client as we grow nationwide. This 5th segment in the Pamana certification tutorial series has familiarized you with the value of cultural diversities, rites and rituals of various cultures, diverse religious observances upon death. Thank you for your interest in becoming a certified Pamana advocate. We hope this brief tutorial was helpful as you grow with us. Please proceed now to the quiz section, and best of luck.